My name is Eleanor Brooks. I am 65 years old. Last Friday, my daughter looked me in the eyes and quietly said, "Mom, you're too old to watch Noah anymore." I smiled, I nodded, I even told her I understood. Then I drove home, walked into the little yellow house where I've lived for 36 years, made myself a cup of tea, and cried at my kitchen table where no one could hear me. 5 nights later, my phone rang at exactly 2:03 in the morning. It was Rachel. She wasn't crying. She wasn't yelling. She whispered only 4 words. "Mom, please come now." By sunrise, everything I believed about my daughter, my grandson, and the meaning of family had changed forever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where this story truly began. Welcome to Family Echoes, where ordinary families carry extraordinary stories. If you've ever loved someone enough to let them misunderstand you, you're in the right place. Sit back, relax, and let the echoes begin. My husband Thomas used to say, "Children never really outgrow the people who make them feel safe." He believed that long before we became grandparents. Thomas was a firefighter for 33 years. I spent my career teaching 3rd grade. We weren't wealthy. We never owned a lake house, never traveled overseas. But our home was always full. Birthday parties, Christmas dinners, school projects spread across the dining room table, neighbors stopping by for coffee. Life wasn't perfect. It was simply ours. When Thomas passed away 8 years ago after a short battle with pancreatic cancer, the house became painfully quiet. The silence settled into every room until Noah was born. Rachel gave birth just 9 months after the funeral. Sometimes I wondered if God knew I needed something to keep breathing. The first time I held Noah, he wrapped his tiny hand around my finger so tightly that Rachel laughed. "He already knows, Grandma." Maybe he did, or maybe I simply needed to believe that. For the next 8 years, Noah became part of almost every week of my life. Every Wednesday after school, every other Saturday, most snow days, half of every summer vacation. We built birdhouses together, burned pancakes together, lost fishing hooks together. He called my backyard Grandma's Forest, even though it was only 6 maple trees and an old swing Thomas built 20 years earlier. Children don't measure places by size. They measure them by memories. Every birthday, Noah insisted we bake the cake ourselves. Every Christmas Eve, he slept in the guest room because Rachel and Daniel both worked late at the hospital. Every spring we planted tomatoes, even though neither of us liked tomatoes very much. Traditions aren't about the activity. They're about the person standing beside you. Rachel never complained, not once. In fact, she often thanked me. "I don't know what we'd do without you, Mom." Those words stayed with me. I believed them. Looking back now, I realize people sometimes mean something when they say it, and sometimes they simply mean it for that season of life. Rachel was 38, a pediatric nurse, hardworking, organized, the kind of woman who color-coded the family calendar. Daniel, my son-in-law, was an emergency physician, kind, quiet, always exhausted. Together they worked impossible hours. Night shifts, weekend shifts, holiday shifts. If I hadn't been there, someone else would have raised Noah. I never resented that. Being needed is a gift when you live alone. When Noah turned 8, little things began to change. At first, they seemed harmless. Rachel canceled one Saturday visit. Noah has soccer practice. Of course, children grow. The next week, he has a birthday party. Naturally. Then, we're taking him to a science museum. Wonderful. I truly meant it. Grandparents should celebrate children's lives becoming bigger. But after a while, Wednesday afternoons disappeared too. Then entire months. Sometimes I'd buy Noah's favorite chocolate chip cookies, only to realize they were getting stale before he visited again. I still remember throwing one unopened package into the trash, not because of the cookies, because it felt like throwing away hope. One evening I called Rachel. Would Noah like to come over Saturday? I found the old train set his grandpa built. There was a pause, longer than usual. Mom, her voice sounded careful. We've actually been talking about something. I smiled into the phone. What is it? Another silence. Then she said, We think Noah is getting older. I suppose that's true, I laughed. No, I mean, she stopped herself. We'll talk this Friday. Something inside me shifted. Not fear, not yet. Just the quiet feeling you get when the sky turns gray before a storm. I had no idea that one conversation would change everything. Friday arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine, the kind of afternoon that made the neighborhood feel peaceful. I baked Noah's favorite cinnamon muffins before Rachel and Daniel arrived. The house smelled exactly the way it always had when he visited. For a moment, I convinced myself I had imagined everything. Maybe this conversation was about school. Maybe they wanted help during summer break. Maybe I was worrying over nothing. At precisely 4 o'clock, Rachel knocked. Daniel followed behind her. Neither of them smiled. Noah wasn't with them. That was the first thing that frightened me. Rachel sat at the kitchen table without taking off her jacket. Daniel wrapped both hands around a mug of coffee, but never took a sip. The silence stretched longer than it should have. Finally, Rachel looked at me. Mom, she took a slow breath. We've been talking with Noah's pediatrician. I frowned. Is something wrong? No, she answered quickly. Nothing's wrong. Another pause. We just think it's time to make some changes. I waited. We don't think it's safe for you to watch Noah by yourself anymore. The words landed gently, but they hit like stones. I blinked. I'm sorry. I don't understand. Rachel leaned forward. You've had 2 falls in the last 3 years. I slipped on ice. I know. And I tripped over Thomas's old garden hose. I know. She looked down at her hands. But you're 65 now. Daniel finally spoke. It's not about today, Eleanor. It's about preventing tomorrow. I looked at him. In all the years I've watched Noah, has he ever been hurt? Neither answered. Have I ever forgotten to pick him up? Silence. Have I ever missed his allergy medicine? Rachel shook her head. No. So what exactly changed? Rachel's eyes filled with guilt. You got older. The room became unbearably quiet. I looked around my own kitchen. The refrigerator still held Noah's drawings. His tiny handprint from kindergarten was framed beside the pantry. His fishing hat still hung on the same hook by the back door. Nothing inside this house had changed, except the number beside my age. I wanted to argue. I wanted to remind Rachel of every overnight shift I'd covered, every fever I'd sat through, every scraped knee I'd kissed, every Christmas Eve, every birthday. Instead, I smiled. If that's what you believe, I'll respect it. Rachel immediately reached for my hand. Mom, please don't be upset. I'm not upset. That wasn't entirely true. I was heartbroken. But heartbreak and anger aren't the same thing. Before leaving, Rachel quietly added, "We also think it would be better if Noah didn't spend the night here anymore." I nodded once. All right. She stood. Daniel hugged me. His embrace lingered longer than usual, almost like he wanted to apologize for something he hadn't been able to stop. After they left, I noticed 3 untouched cinnamon muffins still cooling on the counter. Noah had always stolen one before dinner. Always. This was the first Friday in 8 years that he hadn't. The following week became strangely quiet. No Wednesday visit, no Saturday afternoon, no phone call from Noah asking if the birds had returned to the backyard. Instead, I found myself doing something I had never done before, waiting. Waiting for the phone, waiting for headlights in the driveway, waiting for a message that never came. One afternoon, I drove past Noah's school. Not to spy, just to remember. Children poured through the front doors laughing. Parents waved from their cars. Grandparents stood near the sidewalk holding little backpacks. For a second, I wondered if Noah would see me. Then I realized how foolish that was. I kept driving. 3 weeks passed. I finally called Rachel. Would it be all right if I took Noah out for ice cream after school one day? Her answer came too quickly. I don't think that's a good idea. What about just lunch? We're keeping his routine consistent. I could come watch his soccer game. It's probably better if you don't. Every answer sounded rehearsed, polite, gentle, final. That evening, I sat on the old porch swing Thomas had built. Its chains still creaked the same way they had 20 years earlier. Neighbors walked their dogs, children rode bicycles. Life continued exactly as it always had, only mine had quietly stopped moving. My best friend Margaret called around sunset. She had known me since college. She recognized my voice before I spoke 3 words. Eleanor. What happened? I told her everything, every sentence, every silence. When I finished, Margaret didn't speak for several seconds. Then she quietly asked, "Do you think Rachel is afraid you'll get hurt? Or do you think she's afraid Noah will need you more than he needs her?" The question stayed with me long after we hung up, because for the first time, I wasn't sure I knew the answer. 1 month after that conversation, my birthday arrived, 66. Rachel sent flowers, Daniel texted, Noah mailed me a handmade card. On the front, he had drawn our little backyard swing. Inside, in large, uneven letters, he wrote, "Happy birthday, Grandma. I miss pancake Saturdays." Nothing else, just that one sentence. I read it at least 20 times. Then I noticed something. The envelope had no return address, only Noah's handwriting, as if he had mailed it without anyone knowing. That tiny card became the most valuable thing in my house because it told me something Rachel never had. Noah hadn't forgotten me. Summer arrived quietly. For 8 years, summer had always meant one thing: Grandma Week. The first full week of July belonged to Noah and me. No phones, no rushing, no schedules. Just pancakes in the morning, fishing in the afternoon, and old movies before bed. Thomas had started that tradition when Noah was only 6 months old. "This week belongs to memories," he used to say. After he died, I promised myself I would never let that tradition disappear. This year I bought everything early: a new fishing rod, fresh watercolor paints, because Noah had recently discovered he loved painting birds, a puzzle with 1,000 pieces, his favorite blueberry cereal, even a small telescope. He had been asking to see Saturn ever since his science teacher mentioned its rings. Everything waited in the guest room exactly where it always had. The room looked ready. Only Noah was missing. The Monday before Grandma Week, I called Rachel. "I just wanted to know what time you'll bring Noah on Saturday." Silence. Not the ordinary kind, the kind that makes your stomach tighten. Finally, "Mom, we're not doing Grandma Week this year." I smiled automatically. "Oh, did you already make other plans?" "Not exactly." Another pause. "We just think he's getting too old for sleepovers." Too old. 8 years old. The words didn't make sense. "He still asks about them," Rachel sighed. "I know. But children grow up." I looked around the guest room. The telescope, the puzzle, the fishing tackle, everything carefully waiting. "I've already bought everything." "I'm sorry." That was all she said. "I'm sorry." The next morning, I packed every unopened gift back into the closet, one by one. The telescope stayed in its box. The puzzle remained wrapped in plastic. I folded the little camping blanket Noah always used. The room slowly stopped looking like a child's room. It started looking like a museum, a place where memories lived instead of people. A few days later, I was watering flowers when my neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, waved from across the street. "Haven't seen your little helper lately." She meant Noah. "He keeping busy?" I forced a smile. "Very busy." She nodded. "They grow up too fast." Yes, sometimes they do. Sometimes they're simply kept away. That Friday afternoon, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, no one was there. Then I looked down. A small paper airplane rested on my welcome mat. I smiled immediately. Only one person still folded paper airplanes that badly. Inside was a single sheet torn from a school notebook. The writing leaned in every direction. "Grandma, Mom says you're tired now. I can help you if you're tired. Can we still look at Saturn this summer? Love, Noah." For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. Not because of what he wrote, because of what he believed. He thought I didn't want him anymore. He thought being too old meant I was simply too tired to love him the way I always had. I folded the letter carefully. Then I cried harder than I had the day Rachel told me I was too old. That evening I drove to Margaret's house. She read the note without speaking. When she finished, she looked straight at me. "You need to talk to Rachel." "I already have." "No," she shook her head. You answered her as a mother. This time, answer her as Noah's grandmother. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I knew she was right. Rachel agreed to meet me at a small coffee shop halfway between our homes. Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. She arrived wearing hospital scrubs after a night shift. She looked exhausted, older than 38. We ordered coffee. Neither of us touched it. I slid Noah's note across the table. She frowned. Where did you get this? It was on my front porch. Rachel closed her eyes. He wasn't supposed to... She stopped. I waited. Finally, she whispered, he slipped outside while I was getting ready for work. He wanted to bring it himself. I nodded. So he misses me. Of course he misses you. Then why are you doing this? Rachel stared into her coffee. For a long time she said nothing. Then she whispered something I never expected to hear. I'm afraid. Not of me, not of my age, something else, something much deeper. And for the first time, I realized this story wasn't only about a grandmother losing her grandson. It was about a daughter carrying a fear she had never told anyone. Rachel wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. For a long moment, she stared through the cafe window instead of at me. Finally, she spoke. When Dad got sick, my heart tightened. I watched you take care of him every single day. She swallowed hard. You barely slept. You stopped thinking about yourself. You lifted him when he couldn't stand. You smiled even when you were exhausted. I nodded. I loved him. I know, Rachel's voice cracked, and that's exactly what scares me. I frowned. I don't understand. She looked at me for the first time. I keep seeing you as the woman who never admitted she was tired. The woman who always said she was fine. You slipped twice. You forget where you put your glasses. Sometimes you tell the same story twice. I started imagining something happening while Noah was with you. I reached across the table and gently covered her hand with mine. Rachel. Growing older doesn't mean I've stopped being careful. A tear rolled down her cheek. I know. But after losing Dad, I can't lose you too. Those words changed everything. This had never been about trust. It had been about fear. Fear disguised as protection, fear disguised as control. I should have told you, she whispered. Instead, I pushed you away. I smiled sadly. And in trying to protect me, you hurt both of us. She nodded without arguing. I know. Before we left, I asked one question. Does Noah know this? Rachel shook her head immediately. No. He thinks you don't want to babysit anymore? The words hit harder than anything she had said before. He thinks I chose this? Rachel lowered her eyes. I didn't know how to explain it. That evening, I sat alone on the porch. The sun was beginning to set behind Thomas's old maple trees. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry. I understood Rachel. But understanding someone doesn't erase the pain they caused. 2 nights later, at exactly 2:03 a.m., my phone rang. Rachel's name lit up the screen. The moment I answered, I heard panic in her voice. Mom, she whispered, please come now. No explanation, just an address. The Children's Hospital. I grabbed my keys without asking another question. Every red light felt too long. Every mile felt endless. When I finally reached the emergency entrance, Rachel was standing outside. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. She looked at me, and before saying another word, she wrapped both arms around me like she had when she was a little girl. Then she whispered the words I had feared most. "It's Noah." Rachel led me through the emergency entrance. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear the sounds around me. Doctors, monitors, footsteps, voices, everything felt distant. "What happened?" I asked. Rachel wiped her eyes. "He collapsed during soccer practice." I stopped walking. "Collapsed?" "The coach said he got dizzy. Then he fainted." My stomach dropped. "Is he okay?" "They think so." Think so. 2 words no grandparent ever wants to hear. We entered a small hospital room. Noah lay in bed connected to a heart monitor. His face looked pale, too pale, far too pale for an 8-year-old boy. Rachel sat beside him. I stood quietly near the door. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I should come closer. Then Noah opened his eyes, slowly, sleepily, confused. He looked around the room, at the nurse, at his mother, at the doctor, and then he saw me. A small smile appeared on his face, the first smile I'd seen from him in months. "Grandma." His voice was weak, but it was still Noah. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. "I'm here, sweetheart." The doctor entered a few minutes later. Thankfully, the news was better than anyone feared. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, a minor infection. Nothing life-threatening, nothing permanent. But Noah would need observation overnight. Rachel finally exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Around midnight, Noah became restless. The nurses tried comforting him. Rachel tried reading to him. Nothing worked. Then he looked at me. "Grandma, will you stay?" The room became very quiet. Rachel looked at me, then at Noah, then back at me. I walked over and sat beside the bed. Noah immediately reached for my hand, just like he had when he was a baby. Within minutes, his breathing slowed, his shoulders relaxed, his eyes closed, and he fell asleep, still holding my hand. The doctor returned an hour later. He smiled when he saw Noah sleeping peacefully. "Looks like he found the person who makes him feel safe." Rachel lowered her head. She didn't say anything, because there was nothing to say. The truth was right in front of us. Not in an argument, not in a court document, not in a family meeting, in a hospital bed. An 8-year-old boy had answered the question for all of us. Around 3 in the morning, Rachel and I stepped into the hallway. Neither of us spoke at first. Finally, she looked at me. Her eyes were red from crying. "Mom," she paused, then whispered the words I had waited months to hear. "I was wrong." Rachel and I stood in the hallway for a long time. Neither of us felt the need to fill the silence. Finally, she spoke again. "I kept telling myself I was protecting Noah." She looked toward his hospital room. "But the truth is, I was trying to protect myself." I waited. When Dad died, I promised I'd never ignore warning signs again. Every time you mentioned your back hurting, every time you laughed about forgetting your glasses, I imagined losing you too. A tear rolled down her cheek. "So instead of talking to you, I slowly pushed you away." I gently took her hand. "You don't have to stop loving someone to protect them, Rachel." She nodded. "I know that now." Then she asked the question that surprised me most. "Can you forgive me?" I smiled through my tears. "I forgave you long before you asked." She hugged me tightly. For the first time in many months, she wasn't holding on to me because she was afraid. She was holding on to her mother. Noah came home 2 days later. His recovery was quick, and within a week he was back to chasing soccer balls and asking impossible science questions. The following Saturday, there was a knock on my front door. When I opened it, Noah stood there with his little backpack. Rachel smiled. "So," she said, "is Grandma Week still available?" I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. "I think we can make an exception." Noah threw his arms around me. "I knew you'd say yes." That summer became our best one yet. We finally used the telescope. After nearly an hour of adjusting the lens, Noah looked into the night sky and shouted, "I can see Saturn!" He turned toward me, his eyes shining brighter than the stars above us. "Grandpa would have loved this." I smiled. "I think he does." Life didn't return to the way it had been. It became something better. Rachel stopped trying to carry every fear by herself. She called more often, sometimes just to ask how I was doing, sometimes for advice, sometimes for no reason at all. And every Saturday morning, Noah still came over for pancakes. Only now, Rachel often stayed too. 3 generations around the same kitchen table, laughing, talking, making new memories. Thomas used to say that children never outgrow the people who make them feel safe. He was right. Sometimes adults don't outgrow them either. If this story reminded you of someone who quietly held your family together, share it with them, because the people who make us feel safe are often the ones we thank the least, until we're afraid of losing them.